This is chapter 35 and 36 and the end of section number 4. Or 30. Oh, no, just 35. Sorry. The orange haired man in the tacky red vest looked at the kid with the lopsided afro. You don't have a choice. You either go with this nice lady or I'll call security. And the man got all up in the kid's face, and the kid finally looked away, rolling his eyes. This time, when the shiny lady reached out, the kid curled up his lip and let her put her arm around his shoulder. Well, now, see, I told y'all it was going to be all right. And she took a hold of the little one's hand. Let's see if we can find you a nice cookie, darling. The other kid turned his head and looked back at me one more time before the three of them got lost in the crowd, and I could still see that highfalutin voice all the way, hear that highfalutin voice all the way after they were out of sight. Kayla scooched forward, and I knew what I needed to do. Armani, Celie said for the umpteenth time. What? That man over there wants us to come here. She pointed at a very tall white man standing by himself, and his long gray hair almost reached the pockets of his dirty paw pants that were pulled clear up by his armpits. He seen Celie pointing, and he waved back with a heavy, wrinkled hand and a great big happy smile, and he waved some more and let out a giggle. I pushed her waving hand down. Are you crazy, girl? Don't be waving to strangers. But he's nice, Armani. He has Dumbledore eyes. She wouldn't stop staring and smiling. Dummy sounds are about right, and I stood in front of her to block the view of the homeless-looking man. Not dummy, Dumbledore look. Celie pointed eyes again and still grinning from ear to ear and leaned to the side so she could see past me. The girl had lost her mind. The line moved again and the knot in my stomach twitched. Kayla whimpered, I have to go potty. I had never seen so happy, and I have never been so happy to hear them 4 words. Celie. I slapped my fingers in her face trying to get her attention off me and off of the white man with his high pockets. I grabbed Kayla by the hand and pulled her to the feet. Follow me, I told Celie over my shoulder. Where are we going? Just hush up and do what I tell you and stay close. But we'll lose our place in line, Armani. What part of hush don't you understand? I then lost my patience and just follow me. Don't talk to nobody. Kayla was holding herself and bouncing around like like fire ants were crawling up her legs. Mama would have made her stop jumping around, acting a fool, but I was glad she was doing it because it made it easier for me to get us out of line and quick. My rubber boots squeaked every time I took a step across the shiny floor, and heat filled my cheeks, and I needed to get us as far away as possible from the orange-haired man and his meddling self. Loud enough, but not so loud that it sounded suspicious, I said, Hang on, Kayla, there has to be a bathroom around here somewhere. I have to go now. Kayla was playing her part perfect. Armani. What? I said, taking those squeaky steps toward the line. The bathroom's over there, and Celia had stopped behind me. How do you know? Because he told me. She pointed and smiled at the old mister and so with his pockets all high and his grin too big. He was following us. Was he following us? He seen me looking at him with my lip curled and went on smiling with one bigger than follow me nods in his gray covered head. See, Celie said, all happy. And I let an annoyed poof of air. Whatever. We fell back to the back of the line for the, we fell into the back of the line for the bathroom, and the belly aching poured out of Kayla. It was so loud 1,000 eyes fell on us, and we were finally away from the worry of Mr. Orangehair pulling us off to the side so Miss Highfalutin could come haul us off to who knows where, and now Kayla's fit had everyone in the world looking at us. The baby girl needed a toilet, and she needed it fast, and she wasn't holding her front side no more. Now she had both hands planted firm on her backside, and it had become a serious emergency. Out of nowhere, a teenage girl wearing a red vest came up beside us and wanted to know why Kayla was hollering. She wanted to know if baby needed a doctor, and she seen for herself the way Kayla was clinging for dear life to her booty, and the girl hurried up and told us to follow her. Celie and Mr. High Pockets gave each other a thumbs up, and I didn't have the want to or the time to try and figure out what was going on with Celie and the strange old man. I followed the red vested girl all the way to the front of the line, and I swear Celie skipped up behind me the whole way. The tangy smell of pee flew up my nose walking to the bathroom as a whole new kind of fool-headed crazy filled with blabbering, bickering women and girls and babies all shoved in there like crawfish in a pot. I had never seen Celie's mouth so wide open as when she went to staring at them nasty old women standing around in nothing but their bras, just a jabbering and doing their laundry in the tiny white gray sinks like they did that all the time. Soon they seen Kayla up on her tippy toes grabbing a hold of her backside, and they all but opened a stall and shoved the 3 of us inside. Oh my gosh, this feels good, Celia said, splashing water from the sink on her face, and I watched the water drip round part of her chin. She looked into the cracked mirror and went to smoothing down her flyaway hairs that went with her wet hand. After cleaning my sisters the best I could with the rough brown paper towels, I pulled the water towels down off the dispenser and ran them up under the water to get them good and wet, and I closed my eyes and tried to scrub hurricane muck off my skin. A shirtless woman pushed me out from in front of the sink and started scrubbing her hairy armpits with the lunch bag colored towels and messed with herself in the mirror, not even taking the time to look my way. Whatever was fine by me, but I didn't want to look in no mirror nohow. Before we left the bathroom, I pulled Celie over to a corner and I tried to whisper so no one would hear. Listen, Celie, we can't tell no one that Mama and Daddy ain't with us. You understand that, right? Why? Why what? I was trying to get Kayla up off the floor, but she'd gone and plopped her sleepy, fussy self. But why can't we tell anyone we're by ourselves? Because we can't, that's why. Didn't you see what happened to them boys? And sweat was pouring off me. Kayla, stand up, I nudged with her foot. How come, Amani? Kayla said with her eyes half closed. Celia wasn't even trying to help me with our baby sister. We need to ask someone to help us, Celia said. No, we don't, I said louder, and I meant to. Kayla weighed a ton, and I couldn't get her up. But if we don't get someone to help us, what will we do? How will we find... Did you forget that I just made 10? I yelled in a whisper. Mama left me in charge of y'all, remember? My head hurt when I tried to slide it. Celia wasn't backing down. She flipped her watery eyes up at me and about knocked me over. Celia wasn't backing down. She flipped her watery eyes up at me and about knocked me over backwards when she put both of her hands where her hips should be and did a perfect head roll. Well, she sniffed, you can be in charge, but we still need to tell someone about Daddy and Georgie so we could send help. And she swiped the back of her hand across the soggy face, not even caring about the snot she left there. Her beady little eyes never left mine, and hot stabs poked the inside of my chest. I grabbed her by both shoulders and pulled her in close to me, and I tried not to press my nose against hers, but she did a really good job of pulling her head back as far as her little neck would go. You better listen good, Celie Jean Curtis. Mama ain't here now, is she? My fingers started to dig into her shoulders, and I sure don't see Daddy, and the shaking in my legs moved fast up to my middle. You better do what I say, or I swear I'll just leave you right here. Me and Jesus knew that I'd never leave my sister nowhere, nohow, but right then I shut the door on my baby flying sister, Miss Celie. Big old alligator tears rolled down her cheeks, and I pushed back on her shoulders where I let go, and she stumbled backwards, and I didn't care. I was tired, and I looked away and took a step back and a couple of fast, deep breaths without thinking twice. And I whipped around and got back in her wet baby face, and her hands flew up like she thought I was going to hit her or something. And if Georgie was stupid enough to go and jump on the roof in the water like an idiot, why should I care? My eyes burned, and my whole entire self was shaking. A snot bubble came halfway out of Celie's nose and popped and grabbed Kayla by one arm and slung her up onto my hip. I didn't want to hear one sound out of her for a long while, and I didn't have a clue what Celie was or wasn't doing, mostly because I didn't care right then if my sister was mad or not. All I knew was that I had to do what Mama and Daddy expected me to keep Celie and Kayla and me together and safe. And I marched as best I could with Caleb melted into me and a whiny baby. Celie and her snot bubbles trailing behind me, the whole making loud squeaky noises with my dumb boots and the super shiny marble floors. Finally made it out of the stinking bathroom. Excuse me, a lady tapped my arm, and I looked quick to see if she had on a red vest, and she didn't. The only red she was wearing was up in her cheeks, and I turned and glared at her. I'm sorry, but I couldn't help but overhear you in the ladies' room, she said, and my heart started beating up in my head. Are you children alone? She tried to look at me like she cared. This ain't none of your business, and I looked away and took a step back. She touched my arm. I'd like to help you. Oh, look, Celie sniffed and pointed. There's Daddy. I thought my heart would stop when Celie looked at me with that look of Christmas morning on her face. Daddy? Celie whispered. I did the come here wave that Mr. High Pockets man smiled and walked towards us, and I twitched squirmy Kayla on the other hip. I wanted to hug Celia and tell her I was sorry for fooling her into thinking that our own daddy was right there, but I was more worried about that meddling woman. I stepped away from her busybody woman for the last time, and she looked confused, and her eyes turned teeny slits, looking at us from the old white man back again. Oh, I must have misunderstood. This man's your father? My father, I said. Celie's eyes weighed down on me, and the woman kept right on staring at us while she slowly walked away. You should have just told her the truth, Armani. There was a look in my sister's eyes that made me sad, and her eyes were just plain old brown. Twinkle was gone. I opened my mouth to say something, but I went unclosed when I couldn't think of what else to say, and the man with pockets up by his armpits stood close enough to where I could smell the peppermint coming from him, and the sweet, fresh smell didn't match the look of him, all dirty and most likely homeless. He reached his arms out to Kayla and nodded his head, staring at me the whole time. Kayla reached her arms up to the tall man. What? I asked him, still feeling uneasy. The man nodded at her again, but this time he moved his arms up and down. You want to hold my sister? It was bugging me the man wouldn't open his mouth and just speak. He nodded his head and smiled so big it took up most of his face. Celia was right. There was something about his eyes. Yes, sir, you can hold her, Celia said, all polite. As soon as the man took my baby sister from me, she went and snuggled her head off in the soft poking spot where long silvery hair bunched into a pillow up on the man's shoulder. My empty arms felt like stretched out rubber bands just hanging off my body. Mr. Seeley took a hold of Mr. High Pocket's hand, and my breath caught up to somewhere in my chest and settled like a chunk of dried cornbread. They took about 2 or 3 steps, and the man turned with that smile of his and motioned with his head for me to follow, and Celia never looked back, not one time.